Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome to today's session. How are you doing? I pray that all is well with you and your families at this time. So, an assessment of ourselves at a very deep level, we see that there's different times when we're motivated to act in different ways. And that's not necessarily our mood. It's not necessarily that we're in a certain mood that we're acting that way. But it's a lifestyle that we've created for ourselves, thinking that this is the way I want to live my life now. And that's fine because that's your individual choice. But when you apply that to life, we see many times it doesn't work. And it makes us fall short in a very hard and difficult way, where we're learning about life from personal experiences, which are very difficult. There's certain things in life that we're going to learn through personal experience. And the other things, less painful, the intelligent way is to see what happens in other situations and learn from that. So if we take the school of hard knocks, then we're going to see that life is going to be a little bumpy and a little painful because everything we'll want to learn by experience. But over the years, great people within societies have created and compiled manuals for life. And the Bhagavad Gita is one such manual that encourages us to acknowledge and focus on our strengths, and also encourages us to acknowledge and remember our weaknesses. We don't focus on it, we just remember it. We become aware of it. And as soon as we become aware of it, we realize that where consciousness goes, energy flows. So if we focus on the weaker self of who we are and give that strength, that is what will become awakened and developed. But if we focus our mind, vivas atmaki buddhi eke kurunandana. But if we focus our mind on the positive strengths that we have, connecting it to the spiritual platform, then an ordinary man like you and me can become an extraordinary person. So this is what is being assessed here at the moment in this section that we are studying, the Sthita Pragya. We've studied the development of Arjuna's consciousness from Dhira to the Kutastha, to the Vivas Atmaki Buddhi, and now to the Sthita Pragya. So these four levels of development of the same person, of the same consciousness, but at deeper and deeper realizations. Because this level of consciousness that is being developed, the Sthita Pragya, is being developed from the level of the soul, and that is empowering one from that level of life.
The story of Rubin Hurricane Carter. As it turns out, Denzel Washington had starred in a movie based on Carter's life some time ago, which proved useful in cutting this video together. But Rubin Carter was a top contender for the middleweight title at the height of his boxing career in the mid-1960s. And all of a sudden, he was wrongly accused of a horrific crime he did not commit: triple homicide. He went on trial, and a biased, bogus verdict followed: 3 life sentences. It was a dizzying fall from the heights of success and fame. Carter reported to prison in an expensive tailored suit, wearing a $5,000 diamond ring and a gold watch. And so, waiting in line to be entered into the general inmate population, he asked to speak to someone in charge. Looking the warden in the eye, Carter proceeded to inform him and the guards that he was not giving up the last thing he controlled, himself. In his remarkable declaration, he told them in so many words, "I know you had nothing to do with the injustice that brought me to this jail, so I'm willing to stay here until I get out. But I will not, under any circumstances, be treated like a prisoner, because I am not, and never will be, powerless." Instead of breaking down, as many would have done in such a bleak situation, Carter declined to surrender the freedoms that were innately his attitudes, his beliefs, his choices. Was he angry about what happened? Of course, he was furious. But understanding that anger was not constructive, he refused to rage. He refused to break or grovel or despair. He would not wear a uniform, eat prison food, accept visitors, attend parole hearings, or work in the commissary to reduce his sentence. All of this had a purpose. Every second of his energy was to be spent on his legal case. Every waking minute was spent reading law books, philosophy, history. They hadn't ruined his life. They just put him in a situation he didn't deserve to be, and he did not intend to stay there. He would learn and read and make the most of the time he had on his hands. He would leave prison not only a free and innocent man, but a better and improved one. It took 19 years and 2 trials to overturn that verdict, but when Carter walked out of prison, he simply resumed his life. No civil suit to recover damages. Carter didn't even request an apology from the court, because to him, that would imply that they'd taken something of his that they couldn't have. Even in prison, deprived of nearly everything, some freedom remains. Your mind remains your own, and you have time, lots of time. Carter did not have much power, but he understood that that was not the same thing as being powerless. Many great figures, from Nelson Mandela to Malcolm X, have come to understand this fundamental distinction. It's how they turned prison into the workshop where they transformed themselves and the schoolhouse where they began to transform others.
So as we study today, Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse number 56. Dukkesva anudvigna manaha sukhesu viggatha svaraha vitaraga bhaya krodha stita dhir munir uchyate. Translation: one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries. Yes, so the different levels of disturbances that come to one. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that actually the hub of disturbance, the center point at where disturbance becomes active, is in the mind. Nothing else is disturbed. If the mind is okay, everything else is fine. But if the mind is disturbed, everything else is not okay. So this is the center point, that if one wants to understand what is creating disturbance in one's life, one has to understand one's mind. Because if you don't understand your mind, you're not going to understand the mechanism of disturbance. And if you do understand your mind, one can then learn certain techniques and developments by which you can strengthen yourself at the level of the mind, because you are connected at the level of the soul.
Reading about Rubin Carter's story made me reflect on my own obstacles, my own obstructions, the things I once felt were holding me back, or me feeling like I deserved something, I should have gotten some result and it never ended up working out for me. I had harbored internally all of these feelings about the obstacles and how I was treated with injustice about them. And when I looked at a case of actual injustice, against which my own injustices feel like nothing, it made me consider this power of indifference. This is a very stoic idea, but it also comes from a lot of spiritual traditions. This idea of treating your obstacles, treating your obstructions with a sense of detachment, as if their course doesn't bother you at all. One of the best ways to take revenge against anything is to give it no attention at all. Inattention is the greatest revenge. Why not treat our obstacles the same way? Treat them as if they don't affect us. Now, hopefully, our own obstructions don't look nearly as big as Rubin Carter's did in his life. But even amidst challenges and obstructions, treat them as if that was something that was meant to happen. This is certainly something I'm going to try to embody more and more in my life. The Stoic concept of just not caring and proceeding with the best intentions possible. Concentrating your energies on the things that you can control. Complete non-caring, non-attention to the things that supposedly are trying to obstruct you. And for those of us who are willing to do so, who are willing to concentrate our energies in the right direction, paying no mind to the supposed obstructions, to us I say, greatness is coming.
So Krishna starts today by explaining that these miseries or disturbances, they come in 3 different ways. Adi Atmik, Adi Bautik, Adi Devik. So Adi Atmik is disturbances that are coming from within. That means it's past lives, conditionings, past lives, karma that is maturing now, that is creating disturbances within your life, that is creating disturbances within the mind. So disturbance can only affect the mind. It doesn't affect anything else. So the greatest skill you'll ever learn in the material world, to be an artisan of the mind. To be an artisan, to learn the skill of how to control the mind. So if we know what affects the mind, we're able to control it. So the first level of disturbance is that which is coming from within. The millions of desires that are surfacing due to past lives, that is coming up, and the disturbances that are coming from the outside, the combination of that two is then giving one tremendous trauma at the level of the mind. So that's the first level. Then the second disturbance is adibhotik, one's body weakness, one's body difficulty, one's imperfect senses. One may have trouble with certain senses, maybe like the eyes or the ears or the hands. Whatever it may be, that creates disturbance in the mind. And this also includes, which we know very well, disturbance from other people onto us. Oh, this is a major part of disturbances, right? And the last one, Adi Devik. That disturbances would come from the laws of nature. That means excessive rain, excessive heat, drought. So the combination of these three disturbances affecting one at the level of the mind, that these three disturbances can only affect one because it affects your mind. So once you're able to assess where the pain is coming from, where the disturbance is coming from, then you're able to deal with it in a sensible way, using the purified mind, using the purified intelligence. So this is the first thing Krishna mentions here. He then goes on, "O elated when there is happiness." So the next level of Krishna's assessment is that, Arjun, because you attach to the idea of happiness, which in and itself is not a bad phenomena, but we come attached to it. The word is attached. Happiness in itself is nice, it's good. But when we attach to only happiness, when we're not seeing it in balance, in homeostasis, remember we discussed this word, a sense of balance, that when you understand life, you have to see both the good and the bad. If you only attached, Krishna is saying here, attached to happiness. When you attach to the one side, then that's not balance. And believe it or not, there's also those who are attached to the other side, sadness. Why is that? Because they have such a low self-esteem of themselves that when they are sad, people gives them attention. Hypochondriacs, you know this? This is the state that when one becomes sick just so that one can get attention. And you know how it is, when one is sick, everybody gives attention. So then one trains one's mind to get pleasure from being sick. Just see how the mind can become your worst enemy. So this is such a crazy way, but this is the fact of life. If the mind has not been assessed and if the mind has not been looked at, all these things become symptoms of the way you lead your life. So how do you know what's the right way then?
Whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time. The twining strands of fate wove both of them together, your own existence and the things that happened to you. Marcus Aurelius. As you may well know, Stoicism is an ancient Greek school of thought. It was founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium in the 4th century BCE. According to Zeno, virtue is based on universal reason, and the wise live in harmony with their mostly predetermined fates. In this way, Stoicism teaches one how to be calm and resilient when facing everyday struggles. Above all else, this is to be done with a patient and accepting attitude toward life. In this way, Stoics are meant to be indifferent to vicissitudes of misfortune and discomfort. This is how a good Stoic achieves a lasting state of serenity within his or her own psyche. In regards to this, one of the most important Stoics of all time was a man named Seneca the Younger. His teachings were given mainly through a number of correspondence lessons. Lucilius wrote to Seneca, asking for his help. The thing was that rather than telling his friend not to worry, the great philosopher instructed him to imagine the worst possible outcome instead. Then, Lucilius was advised to convince himself that it would actually happen. Seneca felt that this kind of tolerance of the worst of all possible worlds should be the cornerstone belief of every Stoic. When you get right down to it, short of dying, anything you could ever go through is survivable. As Seneca wrote, it's not what you endure that matters, but how you endure it. The point is not just to accept the fact that bad things will inevitably happen, but to realize that we can handle whatever life throws at us. In asking Lucilius to become comfortable with the idea of being humiliated and impoverished, Seneca was really providing him with a path toward inner peace. This wouldn't be the end of everything, and in many ways, it would offer him a fresh new start. Lucilius was also able to draw strength from the knowledge that Seneca had once endured bankruptcy and even exile in the past. Things had turned out all right for Seneca, so why not Lucilius? By longing for that which is just, as well as preparing for that which is unjust, Lucilius was able to come to terms with his own personal situation. There's no point in getting sad, or even mad about the things you can't change. Just try to make the best of them. Your struggles should be as mountains to climb, not pits to fall into. To quote Seneca, nothing ought to be unexpected by us. Our minds should be sent forward in advance to meet all problems, and we should consider not what is want to happen, but what can happen.
This is what Krishna is speaking here. So the first thing is saying, Arjun, become aware of the three miseries that affect you. Secondly, don't become attached to happiness. Enjoy happiness, but don't become attached to happiness. If you only attach to happiness, that's imbalance. So he goes on further. And who is free from attachment, fear and anger. Wow. These are the three powerful, Krishna later on calls it the gateways to hell. Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Manmana Mamupashita. He calls us, these are the three gateways to hell. Why? Because your life becomes hellish. Attachment, fear and anger. We know the result of attachment is because we always want to experience happiness. But what is the result of fear and anger as described today? So fear and anger is a symptom of hankering and lamenting. Sochati na kanchati. So when one is caught up with the idea of sochati and kanchati, hankering and lamentation, the result of hankering is anger because one's desire is not being fulfilled, so one is hankering. The symptom of that is anger, and the result of lamentation is fear. What is going to happen? I'm going to lose this, so that creates fear. So immediately in life you can assess just from this powerful verse that if you are experiencing anger, fear and attachment, that can immediately tell you the state of your mind. That the mind is overpowering you at the level of existence and it's taking over your life. And because it's not purified, it can head one down the path of oblivion. So assess yourself. This is why Krishna was talking about in the past few verses the divine consciousness. Because when one is rooted at that divine consciousness, then one directs oneself according to Bhagavad Gita. But if not, then that untrained mind can just pull you into anger, pull you into fear, and pull you into attachment. So he goes on, is called a sage of steady mind. Wow, we all want that state to have the mind of a sage. To have the mind of a sage, a mind which is undisturbed, a mind which is calm and peaceful, shanti, 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 that peaceful state. So how does he stay there? There must be certain things that he's doing and there must be certain things that he's not doing. That is how he's able to keep that balance. Because one can only experience balance if one is centered between good and bad. If one is not centered, how do you experience balance? The center of gravity only occurs when one is balanced between the left and the right. If one is choosing either or, either too attached to happiness or too attached to the sadness, and both of that is a result of attachment. You attached even to the negative, which is a sign of attachment. It's not positive attachment, it's negative attachment. So just see how the mind tricks us. So both of it is attachment. And therefore, if one is not centered, if one's center of gravity is not between the good and the bad, then one's mind is unbridled, and that can really create havoc in one's life. So Krishna is describing, and you must remember all these wonderful symptoms that the mind of a sage, when you look at a sage or a spiritual person, you can see that that person is calm, composed, collected, tolerant, patient, all these great qualities. These qualities are only being exhibited outside because the person is connected inside. If the person is not connected on the inside, none of this can be exhibited on the outside. You are only seeing the outer feature of the inner connection. So if you want that, you have to address yourself on the inside. Otherwise, your life is going to continue the way it is going right now.